Hello and welcome back to my channel and my kitchen. Today we are going to be working on making a delicious and nutrient-dense recipe using soaked oats. Last week I shared with you how I sprout legumes, also called beans, in my kitchen to make them more nutrient rich as well as much easier on your digestion. I shared with you 2 recipes on how we often prepare sprouted beans. Now we're going to the next part of this video series, soaking grains. So when I have soaked our grains overnight, so these have been going for 24 hours, they have already started the digestion process so that when we eat the soaked oats, it's easier on our bodies to digest the food. Now, yesterday morning, I spent just a few minutes to prepare the soaked oats. I took about 6 cups of dried, gluten-free, uncooked oats, put them in my pot, covered them with some mysterious water keeper that I just couldn't remember what it was, and then some warm water, stirred it up and sat it in a warm spot, which happens to be above my fridge, for about 24 hours. You could probably go a little longer than 24 hours, but I wouldn't recommend going more than 48 hours for soaking your grains. Obviously, the longer that they soak in a fermented liquid, the more sour that the oats will become. So you do want to play around with it. Maybe start out with 12 hours, see what your family thinks, and slowly increase the time frame of your soaking. For this first part of the recipe, we are going to use about 3 cups of the soaked oats. Okay, and if you notice, the oats are a little bit more slimy than if you were just using cooked oats. Don't worry, once you cook them, they won't be slimy anymore, and they actually are fantastic. My kids and husband love this recipe. Okay, so the rest of these soaked oats we are going to set aside, and we will be using in a second recipe later. So what I like to do is prepare the oats all at once, make this first recipe for day 1 and then the second recipe for the subsequent days of the week. Okay, so to our measuring container, we're gonna add a good sprinkle of cinnamon, a splash of vanilla, a tablespoon of your favorite sweetener. Now, we often use honey in our recipes when we are wanting something a little sweeter. Sometimes I'll use unsweetened applesauce. I currently am almost out of honey, so I figured we'd do applesauce today. You could also use maple syrup. If you are good with white sugar or coconut sugar, you could use those. Or if you want to make a special treat, you could use brown sugar as well. So we'll do about a tablespoon of the unsweetened applesauce. We need a teaspoon of baking powder. Now, the baking powder as well as the dried oats I got from Azure Standard, and I just love buying my bulk baking ingredients from them, as well as grains, legumes, like I shared with you in my legume video on sprouting the beans. Most of their ingredients are non-GMO, a lot are organic, so we're gonna add our tablespoon of baking powder, as well as 3 eggs. So I have 2 eggs from our chickens and then 1 duck egg. And if you've never noticed, duck eggs compared to a chicken egg The yolk is really orange and beautiful. Now, you could do two things. One, you could whisk all of your ingredients together if you would like a chunkier oat. I like to use my immersion blender to blend everything together, so it's actually like a pureed liquid batter, and it really resembles a typical pancake batter. Okay, so now I have our batter all ready to go. And what I did forget to mention is before I start mixing this together, I preheat a cast iron skillet on the stove, and that is almost ready. And we can just go over and add our batter into the pan and start making pancakes. Are you ready? Okay, so to our preheated cast iron skillet, we're gonna add some coconut oil. And then we are going to add our pancake batter. Now, the soaked oats are going to be thicker than your normal pancake batter, so you don't need as many per person. I typically make small pancakes so I can fit about 3 in my pan, but I'm just gonna go ahead and make big pancakes because of course that's more fun. Now, the other thing is if your cast iron skillet is not hot enough, it will stick, so you do want to make sure you have it well and heated, and then have enough oil in your pan in between each batch. One other thing, if you don't have time for pancakes, you could just pour the batter into a baking dish and bake this in the oven, and it would make kind of like a baked pancake or baked oatmeal, and that would still be really yummy. Okay, so I'm just about done making all of our soaked oat pancakes. I thought I'd let you know what we like to put on top of the pancakes. Of course, butter, sometimes honey or homemade jam, and if you want to go a little less sweet, you can put some peanut butter on top. I also wanted to let you know where I got this recipe from, and it's the Traditional Meals for the Frugal Family. I found this book at our library, and we have devoured so many of the recipes in here. They have been great for families, as well as not only getting good nutrition, but also for staying within a budget, which is really important. On my blog, I will show you exactly the breakdown for making these pancakes, and I tell you, it's really not that expensive. Now, let's do the second part of the video. Recipe number 2 is going to be soaked oat granola. Okay, so it is the next day. I just pulled the oats out of the refrigerator. Placing them into the refrigerator stops the fermentation process, which you are welcome to do if you are going to be doing these recipes over the course of several days. If you get it all done in one day, great job, by the way, because I don't have time for that, but then your oats would be room temperature. The temperature of the oats really doesn't matter. Now, For the next part to create our granola, I am going to be showing you what I normally put into our oats, and most of it is a rough estimation, or what I call eyeballing. That is probably not a professional term, but we're gonna go with it. So first we need some melted fat. I'm using organic unrefined coconut oil. You could do butter, ghee, you could just use regular oil if you would prefer, but something to decrease the oats from burning while they're cooking. I had about a half a jar worth, so I would say about a cup of your fat. Next, we're going to sweeten our oats. So I have some honey. Now you could do honey, maple syrup, any variety of sugar that you prefer, and about a cup's worth for your typical sweetness. I'm going to do about half honey and half unsweetened applesauce. This not only adds a subtle apple flavor, but it does increase the sweetness without adding any sweetener. An extract. So I'm using some homemade vanilla extract. If you want, you could do vanilla. You could try a fruity flavor like orange or lemon. You could do like almond. I would say stick with vanilla if this is your first time making granola, and then you can play around with different extracts and flavors. We'll do about a tablespoon of this. Now you can add some seeds, some nuts, shredded coconut, or dried fruit. This is what I have on hand. A lot of times I'll do chia seeds and or flax seeds. So these are just some whole flax seeds that I have. So we'll do about a quarter cup of these three items. Now we're gonna stir it all up and get it onto our baking sheets and then get it into the oven. So something really important to remember is if you want crunchy granola, you need a really thin layer of the oats in your pan. If you don't mind about having such a crunchy granola, then you could keep it a little bit more thick. And if you would like to turn this into granola bars because you don't have time to make granola, then you can pack it all down really thick, and then when it's done baking, cut it into squares. Okay, we're gonna pop this into the oven. The oven is on 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm going to stir the granola every 30 minutes until it becomes a nice crispy golden brown. Okay, so I just took our granola out of the oven. Now, I did turn the oven off after it was done cooking. So about the 2-hour mark, I turned the oven off and left the granola sitting in the oven for another 30 minutes to finish hardening. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the 2 ways that our family loves to have soaked oats. If you enjoyed this, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to share and subscribe. I'll see you next time. Bye.